All right, so we're going to talk about why you should take this course, why you should spend a couple hours a day or whatever time you feel like learning how to analyze epidemics in general. We'll talk a little bit about zoonotic, meaning derived from animals, um, diseases, and why they might be particularly problematic. But if we go back all the way to March 17th, 2.2 million people in the U.S. could die if coronavirus goes unchecked. Donate, don't forget. This is a big money maker for a lot of people, and a big money loss for a lot of other people. But a lot of us are hanging out at home, some of us not so much. But you'll also remember back when Anthony Fauci was all smiles back about the same time, predicting that 200,000, once they'd, of course, instituted a little bit. This was March 30th. Finally, the governors of the big states decided to close their bars at night. And so now we're still talking about 200,000 dead. He's now since come back to maybe 60,000 since doesn't look like um, the smiling 200,000 is there. But suddenly we all started watching the worldometer, right? It became our go-to for everything that mattered. And ooh, it's pretty bad now. 1 million cases in the U.S., 3,000 new dead. These are kind of depressing numbers. And ooh, finally they've stretched this thing out a little bit so it doesn't go straight up. If you look at this on your phone, it goes and goes straight up. Doesn't look like it's flattening out at all. But this gives us sort of a sense of what's going on. And we've been flat for a long time. I don't think most people thought flattening the curve meant it flattened out at 30,000 cases a day and went on for 6 months. Those of you who didn't actually read Ben Bolker's post, and we'll get a link to that just for fun. And as we became slightly more interested in where, we started watching the Johns Hopkins page like mad, and it took them a couple months to actually get their data points in the right places, but all of them. So that's a really hard task, though, for a couple of people to do, and got more money. And so it's pretty cool. They actually have a mobile version, etc. So now they have a U.S. map, which sort of allows you to see more where. But we went to these things and we watched them and we see this and the log and the daily case. This is such a lovely dashboard. Wouldn't you like to know how to make one like this? Well, this one is made in a dashboards app for Esri, and that would require you to have ArcGIS Pro and more money than you're probably willing to fork out in the short run. We will have some links on how to use dashboards in ArcMap and ArcGIS, but we're going to use some different software that you can, in fact, afford. But we will build our own really cool dashboard in R. And then as we became a little more macabre, we actually started going to the healthdata.org from University of Washington. They were sort of predicting this thing we would flatten out by the middle of April and then tail off fairly quickly. And then, for first it was sort of middle May we'd be able to go back. Now their sort of death predictions end by June 1. But again, it would be kind of cool to figure out what's behind that, what sort of models are behind this. And we will. These models are, they've changed. We'll look at the Python script very briefly, largely because we're going to steal from that and use it in R. We could do it in Python, but that will be much more work. And most of you don't want to learn Python to do this. And to do this in R's, 10 lines. In Python, it's a few more. All right, so that's why we're doing this. Class is so you can understand what sort of goes into these models and what goes into the maps. So this is really a visualization course. We're not going to do any calculus of variations. We will do some SEIR, epidemiologic modeling, but we're not going to do the math behind it. While fun, it's not fun for everyone, and we're trying to make this as much for everyone as possible. It will be taught in Excel, mostly, because there are some things you probably don't think of Excel doing. I'm going to show you right here. I'm going to grab the data from the GitHub repository. Many more of us learned about what GitHub is during this because we had time to sit down and click on links. And so this is yanking the data from the New York Times repository. The Johns Hopkins is slightly larger. Pause for a second so you didn't have to wait for bandwidth lag. Not really, it's just a big data set. Everybody says bandwidth now like they knew what it meant. And so I'm going to click load, and it's going to spin for a minute. It tells me it's getting the data, and ta-da! I have this lovely set of data here. It didn't take very long to get it all. It was a couple clicks of a mouse in less than a minute. And now I can go to insert, and I'm going to throw in a world map. And it's going to spin for a little while, probably about a minute, maybe two, because, oops, are we good? No, quicker than that. All right, my bandwidth must have improved in the last 30 seconds. All right, so now it's got a map of all those counties and where it is. It's taking a little while to fill in the map because now virtually every county has cases. And we could go to redrawing the whole county map instead of this, but we'll stay here for just a second. I'm going to spin this, and then the height, I'll just put deaths. And kind of macabre, that's New York City, which isn't actually in New York City because the way they do it, New York City ends up in the middle of the state. In this class, we'll learn how to actually put all of the data into lovely counties where they belong in New York City. The 5 boroughs have counties associated with them. We'll learn about that and end up with some pretty cool ways to analyze what's happening in New York. We'll provide additional data sets for Philadelphia and Chicago for you to play with yourself. But like I said, I'm not so happy with that map. I want one that looks more like the Johns Hopkins States map. So I'm going to click that. It's going to take a while to fill up. All right, grinding away as it is. I'm going to go add a field, and I'm going to add the date because we want to do a little bit of dynamics here and simulate across the entire area. So we could have our entire map. Notice it puts a slider here, so I could play from the beginning to the end. Ooh, if I go way over here, nothing. Look, 220, nothing at all. I slide all the way over here. Dun, 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 dun. All right, so we see the number of cases building up, but the wide outlines make it just slightly difficult to see what's going on. So I'm just going to zoom in over to this area of New York. So there we go. So I can drag my slider back and forth, and we can see all the dark blue is out here in New York. And we're okay. So there we go. We have a video on how to turn this into red, how to capture this. Goes super fast here. Nothing. Into March, into April. In a very short period of time, in just a flick of an eye, we were to highly infected, sort of everywhere, and we followed it in a kind of creepy, weird way. But we'll show you how to do this in Excel and a bunch of other cool things in R, etc. So you should take this class. I wanted to do the first thing in Excel to show you we could get to mapping and doing some data visualization for epidemics in Excel within minutes, not days. And that's the way this course is going to operate. You will have modules that take 20 to 30 minutes, and in that time you will learn a skill for visualization and mapping of epidemics. We'll do some more serious modeling in the class for SEIRs and using R and RStudio as well. But for the most part, you should be able at the end of this to create dashboards that look like the JHU one, and predictions of death and flattening of curves and that sort of thing. So that's what this course is about. If you're interested, take it. It's free.